Horror knows exactly what to do with warm weather. It sends you to a motel where the shower isn't safe. It sends you back into the water when you should absolutely know better. It turns the biggest comic book sequel in the country into a Gothic freak show. And then, just when you think the week can't get any stranger, it opens a spaceship near Halley's Comet and brings something hungry back to Earth. This week, we're talking about fear as a marketing event, lines around the block, posters you couldn't escape, summer releases that taught audiences to be nervous about bathrooms, beaches, villains in rubber masks, crowds that move like a wave of teeth, and beautiful strangers who might be draining the life out of London. So check the peephole, stay out of the ocean, and if a space mission brings back something too perfect to be human, maybe don't get close enough to find out. Welcome back to This Week in Horror History, your weekly time machine through the creepiest anniversaries in film, TV, books, and games. I'm your host, Enrique Couto, and this week is June 15th through 31st. Coming up, Hitchcock rewrites the rules of moviegoing and basically teaches America how to be afraid of a shower. A Shark sequel proves that Amity Island has the worst tourism board on Earth. Tim Burton drags a famous superhero into a wintry carnival of trauma, cats, and penguins. And Brad Pitt runs from a zombie apocalypse that moves less like undead shufflers and more like a human flood. Then, after the break, our deep-cut spotlight takes us to June 21st, 1985, when Tobe Hooper canon films Halley's Comet and space vampires collide in one of the wildest cult horror outings of the decade. June 16th, 1960, Psycho opens at the DeMille and Baronet Theaters in New York, and Alfred Hitchcock does something brilliant. He makes the audience part of the machine. No late admissions, no spoilers, no sneaking in halfway through and asking your friend what you missed. That policy made Psycho feel like an event before people even knew what it really was. And once they did know, the movie changed horror forever. It took the monster out of the castle and put him behind the front desk. It made a cheap motel feel mythic, and it turned one ordinary bathroom into the most famous crime scene in cinema history. And something a lot of people don't realize about Psycho and why their marketing campaign was so truly unique is, in the early days of cinema, it was very common for people to join a film already in progress, especially when it was one of the only public spaces where, for a small fee, you could experience air conditioning. That alone got a lot of people in the seats. But back in those days, it was very common to buy a ticket, go see a movie, regardless of where in the runtime the movie is, and if you liked what you saw, you would stay for the second show and watch what you missed. That's the way cinema was in the early days for many moviegoers. But Psycho saying no one would be admitted after the first 10 minutes of Psycho or something like that, I'm paraphrasing, that was a huge deal and the beginning of American audiences deciding that they wanted to see a film from beginning to end in the cinema. That's a big deal. Psycho cost roughly $807,000 and became the most profitable film of Hitchcock's career, with about $32 million domestic and around $50 million in total gross, often cited across releases. I don't think I have to tell you what a classic Alfred Hitchcock Psycho truly is, but if I do, well, you should definitely be watching it tonight, maybe with the lights on, unless you think black and white movies won't scare you, because they will. It's available to rent or buy on Prime Video, Apple TV, and Fandango at home. June 16th, 1978, Jaws 2 hits theaters and asks the immortal question. After the last giant shark disaster, why is anyone still swimming near Amity Island? No Spielberg this time, and the magic is different, but the core anxiety is still nasty. The water looks normal until it's not. Roy Scheider's Brody is trapped in the most frustrating horror movie position of all. The guy who's right, but sounds crazy because nobody wants the scary thing to be true. The sequel was huge for its moment. It cost about $20 to $30 million depending on the source, and ultimately made around $187.9 million worldwide, proving the shark still had box office teeth. And I think Jaws 2 actually holds up very well. I think it's a nice change of pace from watching the first Jaws film every summer to get that summertime vibe of beach, sand, sun, and, well, bloody water. So if you haven't seen Jaws 2 in a while and you need a revisit, or you've never went into the water again, it's available to watch with your Starz membership, or you can, of course, rent or buy on Prime Video, Apple TV, and Fandango, dango at home. Hey, what do you want me to do? I have to say it so often. June 19th, 1992, Batman Returns arrives. And if we're being honest, it is basically a Christmas horror fairy tale, wearing a superhero cape for flavor. Tim Burton takes Gotham and turns it into a black snow globe. Sewer layers, circus gangs, stitched leather, abandoned children, corporate monsters, and a penguin who feels less like a villain and more like a nightmare somebody left in the basement a little too long. I know this one may be a little controversial, but of all of the Batman films, especially of that era, I think Batman Returns does bring the horror vibes the most. And it was a major hit, about $266.8 million worldwide on an $80 million budget. But it was also a bit too strange and kinky and grotesque and sad for the toy aisle version of Batman that most people were expecting, which of course is exactly why horror fans appreciate it. And if you don't remember just how horror-esque Batman Returns is, or you've never seen it somehow, it is streaming currently on HBO Max with your subscription, and of course you can rent or buy it on Prime Video, Apple TV, and Fandango at home. June 21st, 2013, World War Z hits theaters, and the zombie outbreak gets blockbuster speed. These are not shambling graveyard ghouls. These things climb and swarm and pour over walls like panic has become a weather system. The production story was famously messy with rewrites and a reworked ending, but the finished movie did manage to connect with audiences. It made about $540.5 million worldwide on a reported $190 million budget, becoming one of the biggest zombie films ever released. And while, yes, it has a lot more of the big budget sheen of a high-end action movie and a big star in Brad Pitt, at the end of the day, it's about zombies chomping guts, so it's still worth your time, especially if you've never seen it. It's currently streaming on Paramount Plus with your subscription, and of course, to rent or buy on Prime Video, Apple TV, and Fandango at home. On Weekly Spooky, our mini-series Summer of the Demon has already turned Camp Redfeather into a nightmare of blood, football, revenge, and something wearing a cursed jersey. Eddie Pee Wee Richter already survived the demon once, but now he's learning the truth may be even worse than he imagined, because maybe the monster stalking the camp isn't who he thought at all. Tomorrow in part 3, we start digging deeper into the mystery behind the jersey, the missing body, and the people who knew the demon before he became a monster. Their search leads them back to Strickfield, to the empty room of the demon's ex-girlfriend, and a hidden journal that changes everything. Who really stopped the demon that night over a year ago? Who took the jersey? And if the demon isn't Greg, then what the hell is it? But the answer comes with a body count. As the demon is done waiting in the shadows, he's tearing through Camp Redfeather in the broad daylight. He's turning practice fields into killing grounds, and when a scrimmage becomes a slaughter, Pee-wee finds himself exactly where the demon wanted him all along. Summer of the Demon Part 3 drops tomorrow on Weekly Spooky. So make sure you're subscribed, and if you've missed the previous parts, don't worry, they're waiting for you on the feed. So get ready for some summer scares with us, because the demon is ready to finish the game. All right, my spookies, let's take a quick breather. When we return, we're leaving the beach behind and heading deep into space. Because on June 21st, 1985, a film opened in US theaters and asked one important question. What if the end of the world arrived from space and looked impossible to resist? All right, we're back, so let's get into it. On June 21st, 1985, Lifeforce opens in US theaters, and somehow one movie manages to combine Halley's Comet, alien vampires, naked cosmic seduction, zombie-like plague victims, London destruction, and Canon Films excess into one absolutely unhinged and delightful cult movie. This is Tobe Hooper after the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Poltergeist, working on a much bigger and stranger canvas, completely unleashed, and Lifeforce feels big, in fact, in some ways too big. This is part of the charm, though. It starts with a space mission investigating a massive alien craft hidden near Halley's Comet. The astronauts find preserved humanoid bodies inside. Naturally, humanity does what humanity always does in horror. Brings the impossible thing home and acts shocked when the impossible thing wakes up, and of course, it's pretty hungry too. The central idea is wonderfully strange. I don't know how else to put it. These beings don't just drink blood. They drain life energy. They feed on the human force itself, leaving bodies empty, contagious, and desperate to take that energy from someone else. So the movie becomes a space vampire story, an outbreak movie, a disaster movie, and a very, very sweaty 1980s apocalypse all at once. And not to mention, the main monster of the film is a beautiful woman who wears no clothing for the majority of the time, which definitely makes it stand out. Lifeforce is not subtle or tidy. It's not one of those cult movies where you wonder why audiences missed out the first time. You can see exactly why people didn't know what to do with it, but that's also why it's lasted. It's simply too strange to disappear. The movie reportedly cost around $25 million and made only $11.6 million at the US box office, so as a commercial bet, it did not exactly conquer the summer, but as a deep cut, it is fantastic, ambitious, ridiculous, eerie, horny, cosmic, and completely committed to its own madness, and legend has it the entire reason this film was made and allowed to go so far over budget and be so completely unhinged is because Cannon Films was trying to keep Tobe Hooper happy so that they could get the rights to and have him direct Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which did eventually happen. So if you've never seen Lifeforce, you really do need to. And it's not hard to watch. It's available free with ads on Tubi and Roku channel, and you can watch it on MGM Plus with your subscription, and of course, buy or rent on Prime Video, Apple TV, Fandango at home, or anywhere else you rent your movies digitally. Now let's light a creepy candle and celebrate some horror birthdays. Starting on June 15th, 1964, when Courtney Cox is born. Gale Weathers herself, a Scream franchise anchor who turned ambition into survival instinct. No matter how many other mainstream films and TV shows she's done, she'll always be Gale to us horror fans and most of the country at large if those box office numbers can be believed. So happy birthday, Courtney Cox. And another Scream alumni on June 16th, 1955, Laurie Metcalf is born. The Scream 2 secret weapon, if you will, bringing sitcom warmth and full-tilt genre chaos into one truly unforgettable turn. I remember this blowing my mind when I saw it as a kid. So happy birthday, Laurie Metcalf. Now for a legit member of horror royalty. Born on June 18th, 1952, John Carl Buechler. Makeup effects artist and director behind Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, Troll, and piles of practical monster work. The man worked on so many horror films, I guarantee you've seen more than 4 of them. He really has his fingerprints on such a remarkable amount of classic horror films, from Terror Vision, From Beyond, Ghoulies 2, Reanimator, Trancers, Deathstalker, Mausoleum, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, Carnosaur 1 and 2, Project Metal Beast, a personal favorite of mine, Halloween 4, Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. The man has done it all, and he is worthy of legend status, and we lost him far too young. So a very happy birthday to John Carl Buechler. And for our final birthday this week, a mainstream name that went horror in a big way and was highly memorable. Born on June 20th, 1967, Nicole Kidman. The elegant haunted heart of The Others, a film, if you haven't seen it, you desperately need to. It's one of the great modern ghost story performances I can think of. She really went all in and, in my opinion, gained respect from genre audiences. So happy birthday, Nicole Kidman. For our then and now this week, it's horror learning how to sell fear at scale. Psycho turns suspense into a public ritual. Show up on time, keep the secret, scream together. Jaws 2 proves the shark still had teeth for a sequel, even without the original Spielberg fairy dust, so to speak. Batman Returns proves a studio blockbuster can still be weird, wounded, and grotesque. World War Z shows the zombie apocalypse as global disaster cinema. Not one corpse at the door, but the whole world tipping over at once and hungering for flesh. And of course, Lifeforce is what happens when 1980s blockbuster ambition gets possessed by pure cult horror lunacy. Space vampires, apocalypse, and the feeling that maybe humanity should stop bringing strange things back from space. Maybe, just maybe. And for our weekly recommendation, if you want some classic horror to go with your week, bust out Horror of Dracula. In the United Kingdom, it arrived on June 16, 1958, after its earlier U.S. release under the title most people now know it as, which is Horror of Dracula. It was released originally under the title Dracula alone, but nobody wanted confusion, I guess, later on. And then Hammer Horror suddenly presented a sharper bite to audiences. Christopher Lee's Dracula is not just a cape and a castle. He's animal hunger in elegant clothes. Peter Cushing's Van Helsing is all speed, intelligence, and a good dose of holy fury. It's short, colorful, and wonderfully direct, the kind of Gothic horror that feels like it was painted in blood red and candlelight. Always worth another watch. I mean, Hammer Dracula movies, they're hard to go wrong with, at least in the first 2 decades, and this one really kicked them all off. You can check it out right now to rent or buy digitally on Prime Video, Apple TV, and Fandango at home. Imagine that. Well, my spookies, that was your trip through June 15th to 21st in horror history. Don't forget to come back by tomorrow for our 3rd installment in the summer mini-series, Summer of the Demon. We know you'll enjoy it, and on Thursday we'll have a brand new Thursday Thrills to keep you informed on all the weirdness coming and going. There's something spooky for you really every single day of the week here on the Weekly Spooky feed, so make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast app. That way the fear is always near. And I'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another dive into horror history. So until then, remember, our days are numbered, because that's how we tell them apart. See you next week.